people are still skeptical about AI. But I think one of the scariest things is when people start trusting it and are no longer skeptical.
Yeah.
And if you take the AI's word for the gospel, then that's when we could be screwed over. There are always going to be errors, and that could get scary.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Episode 1, huh?
Yeah, all right.
All right, guys. Quick little introduction. I'm super excited to be here today. I've been kind of anticipating this for quite a long time. Just never really did it, but here it is, my podcast. My name is Navid Rahimian. I go by Nav. I actually started my career in accounting as a CPA. I started in the Big Four. Spent about a decade in the asset and wealth management space out there, and it was great experience. A lot of Nav. I don't know if you know, Quinn, but Nav in the asset management world is a very important benchmark, net asset value. And at one point, I just knew that I kind of wanted a more entrepreneurial feel, get out of the corporate scene a little bit, and wanted to start my own thing and really add more value. I figured a lot of the add value stuff that I was doing earlier on in my career kind of dwindled, just became a regular thing. And, I decided to take on a completely new effort, and that's help small business. And I'm thankful to say the last 4 or 5 years that I've been fully on my own. It's been incredible. Met some brilliant minds, met some hardworking guys. I love adding value to businesses and business owners and entrepreneurs, and super, super excited to start this podcast. Yeah. Without further ado, I want to introduce our first guest, my man Quinn. Quinn has been doing some great stuff for us on social media fronts. So thank you in advance for that, and a lot of our AI automation efforts. So we'll get into that in a little bit. But Quinn, I probably didn't do your show justice, but why don't you maybe introduce yourself for a little?
Yeah, okay, so my background is social media management. I have a degree in finance, but I have a content production company called iMagnify. And my side of things in that is working on more the finance and the operations side in terms of creating internal business systems. Uh-huh. And so that has a lot of AI inside of it, like Zapier and Axiom AI. They're amazing softwares that allow us to do a ton of stuff in terms of automating our business.
Yeah, totally. Where'd you go to school?
LMU.
Well, I'm out. Nice. So local in LA.
Yes.
Were you born and raised?
Yeah, we're raised in a suburb of LA, just outside. Westlake Village basically is home for me.
Yeah.
But when I went to school, I was finally able to experience the city life a lot more, and it feels like everything's just so connected because I can drive in any direction, I can find something cool, whereas in the suburbs, the only thing to do is really just hang out in the mountains,
Yeah. I mean, so you went to, was it Westlake High, or where'd you go for high school?
Agora High School.
Agora. Yeah, cool. So I wasn't too far. I went to Taft. So I went to Woodland Hills, grew up there. Born in Israel.
Uh-huh.
But our family made a trek out here very early when I was very young. So pretty much all my life I've been here too. And in LA native too. And didn't go too far for college either. So UCLA for me. Also, did you end up living in college in LMU, or did you do that commute? Because that's a killer commute.
I did end up living on campus.
Okay.
And then I moved off campus a little bit later.
Okay. And I guess Playa del...
yeah, it's Playa Vista.
Playa Vista.
Playa Vista.
Nice.
And I would say going from in like a small town high school to a larger college, I think there's 4,000 to 8,000 people at that school. There's a really big culture difference, both from the location and from the types of people.
Sure.
Very interesting.
Sure. Yeah.
And I would say one of the biggest ones is wealth. So going to a private school, there's a lot more very wealthy people compared to going to just a regular old public high school.
Sure.
And then the location also has a bigger impact too. And I would say that at home, the culture there was a lot larger, there was a much wider variety of intelligences. I noticed that in high school, you would have the smartest people who would, Ivy League material. These guys could solve a calculus question in middle school.
Yeah.
And then there's these people who, were the stoners and could never do anything. Not that there's anything wrong with, being a stoner, but there's very different life paths. And, when you have you go out to college, I find that you find that sort of variety narrows down into a single group, and there are groups within that, of course, but it's a much more homogenous type of group, more than I had expected.
Yeah. So you don't like stoners, huh? I'm calling out stoners.
I am a little bit. I'm not calling out, I'm actually a libertarian in terms of drug use.
Okay.
I think that everyone should have the right to do whichever drugs they want. I think heroin should be legal. Okay?
Heroin should be legal.
I don't think you should do it. I think no one should do it.
But you should? You don't think it should be legal? Why?
Because I'm a man of the principle.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe that you, as a human being, have the right to make that decision for yourself, so long as it doesn't affect other people around you.
Sure.
So I don't know about the effects of heroin specifically. I think, it's incredible high, but if if you do a hard drug and it makes you violent, that's a drug that should be outlawed. There is a good counter argument too, which is the self-harm aspect. If it's violent to yourself, that is a good counter argument. But the place that I'm coming from is a matter of principle in terms of being allowed to do what you want to do in your own home.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the philosophy that I like to live by.
Yeah, and there's a lot of corruption when stuff becomes illegal, like drugs, right? And so, why have these illegal cartels and whatnot benefit on such crazy activity? I mean, I won't get crazy with opium use as much, even though it's probably the worst pandemic we're dealing with. But even stuff like marijuana that's just recently become legalized, and we can see the impacts on revenues in different states, and I'm all for it, man. I think maybe think about legalizing it, and so obviously putting certain constraints over it. But if it's going to happen, it's been happening for years, and it's not going to stop. People who want to use are going to use.
Yeah.
Why not just legalize it? And actually, we are in a big difficult economic situation, which we'll get to in a little bit too. And, why not? I think the cannabis industry has been incredible for states that have legalized it.
Yeah. It's a lot of tax revenue. Yeah. And this is actually a principle that's true for government. But something about drug use in high school and especially in that realm, I found that families where the parents are a lot more strict on drug use raise the kids who want to do it the most.
Yeah.
And so my parents were not very strict there. We don't support this, but if you end up going and doing cocaine, I want you to be able to call us.
Right.
Where there were some parents who said, if you do this stuff, you are dead. You are dead to us. And so what happens when that kid is in trouble there? They've had too much to drink in high school, and their parents have been too strict. Who they called for a ride home?
Yeah.
And that's how you end up having these drunk driving accidents and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I think we're both blessed in that, we have a family and upbringing that kind of, supports ours. And that's like really the core of when I always think about it. When shit goes down, everything is, in life, you have your ups and downs. At the end of the day, when you have those downs and having your family by your side, it's just, from growth and from like my childhood to this day, it's been an absolute blessing. And shout out to all the parents and the moms and dads that are just, living selflessly all day. So yeah, awesome stuff. All right. So, kind of want to go over some of the things that I'm looking forward to, covering over the next few podcasts here. Obviously a lot of things business, the world is ever changing. There's so many different things within the finance and accounting and business world overall, and I want to try and cover as much as I can on this podcast. At the same time, I kind of want to stay true to having a little bit of fun, and that, for me, I'm all into sports, and I kind of want to continue to talk about sports and keep up with the trends, and also music, all the good stuff, get a little crazy and just switch it up a little bit and not be all work. I'm truly blessed to have a really, really great surround and support system, and my client base and my mentors and all these people. And I'm really looking forward to bringing them on this podcast. Really looking forward to bringing some of those guys on. So for my clients and my guys that I just mentioned, keep an eye out. You're coming soon, and I'm looking forward to collaborating a little bit. So Quinn, I mean, look, I know you have a ton of value to offer for our guests, and wanted to spend a little bit of time honing in on some of the unique social media content efforts that you're able to achieve for your clients, including us. You want to chime in a little bit?
Yeah. So the overall format that we like to use is hook, story, offer.
Okay.
And if something's wrong with your content, one of those three parts is wrong. It's your hooks, your story, or your offer.
Okay.
And so our job is basically to go in and evaluate what's wrong, or if you don't have any content at all, we'll basically do all of it. And then if it's not working right away, then we'll adjust one, adjust the other, adjust the offer.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's our overall value add.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing is in terms of a sales funnel.
Okay.
So are you aware of what the term sales funnel is?
I am, but I'm sure some of our guests are not. And so why don't you explain a little bit?
Okay. So a sales funnel is basically a mechanism in your business that takes strangers and turns them into customers. And so it doesn't really go straight from stranger to customer. You take certain stepping stones along the way to build a relationship with them before they're willing to give you their money.
Sure.
Because your money is a personal thing. And in order to buy something from you, I have to trust you as a human being.
Sure.
Or at the very least, not even as a human, but at the very least, I have to trust you as a business.
Sure.
And so that's something that we like to do a lot of. So typically the top of our funnels for us and our clients is social media content, because that's the best place that you're going to find a wide variety of people in basically any interest by posting content that those people are interested in. So that's sort of what we specialize in, basically.
Oh, that's very good. And so as it relates to the funnel, so what are some maybe tools and tricks to the funnel to kind of capture the trust of your audience? Is it with maybe kind of the actual type of content, or how you produce the content, or what would you say?
So the trust is honestly the second step. The first step is attention, and then it's trust.
Sure.
As far as trust, though, the way I would go about that is you can't ever try to sell them something point blank. Mm-hmm. So if you tell them, I want you to buy this, that never works. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I give it to you as a value add, so if I say, this is something that has really worked for me and this has improved my life, without telling you, the audience, to do anything, that's the number one thing that I find builds trust.
The whole sales funnel thing reminded me of a couple of good books that I've written, I'm sure, or not written, but read, and I'm sure you probably have a few recommendations. Mine would be .com Secrets. Have you read that book?
I read Traffic Secrets.
Okay, so it's like the sequel to it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, who's the author again? Russell Brunson, right? The ClickFunnels guy.
Probably one of the top sales funnel people in the world that you can consult to. Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. What about on the AI fronts, man? I mean, I know you've dove a little bit in our organization on that, and we actually just had a really meaningful collaboration with our team about ChatGPT and ChatGPT for accountants and what we can implement within our firm. How are you kind of seeing certain things? How are you seeing it evolve? Is there something specific that you're like, hey, if this company is not using AI for this particular op, they're fucked? Is there something that is there an automatic thing, or what's your take on it?
Yeah, weirdly, I think it's so first of all, I think it's towards creative, away from number stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know, have you ever tried to do big math problems on ChatGPT?
I have, and even with certain tax complex tax matters that I wanted to present and have it spit out. It does it, but it's not tried and true. And so, as accountants, as CPAs, we're always taught to hold our professional skepticism. And, that for sure goes with ChatGPT. It's not 100%. And so we actually have discovered an error, notified ChatGPT of the error, and then it apologized to us and said, here's the real answer. And then it answered it correctly. So, yeah, but
That makes perfect sense. And don't ever use it for math because it's not actually doing math like your calculator is. It's basically taking its pattern recognition, says, okay, when I see these two similar numbers multiplied together, generally the beginning sort of looks like this, the end sort of looks like this, and it'll give you a number sort of like that. And it's not even a real answer. But in terms of, real business uses, I think that especially for creative fields, it's really good at idea generation. It's not good at the final product, but if you're a script writer and you want to figure out ideas to, like I don't know what to write a story about, you can use ChatGPT to help you figure out ideas.
Right.
I think its biggest use in any field is preventing writer's block. So that's my opinion on that, I think,
How do you guys implement it within your business right now?
So the way we like to use it is first, before we use ChatGPT at all, we have systems that are able to scrape Twitter, scrape TikTok, scrape Instagram, and find the best performing content inside your niche. And then once we have that, we take those concepts and plug them into ChatGPT, and we're able to get scripts and ideas for any business, or even if you're not doing a business, for any, kind of content. And so basically the purpose of ChatGPT is to not just copy someone else's idea, but it sort of takes multiple ideas that are proven to perform well, and it's able to use those together.
It's very interesting. I mean, you said something that kind of went counter to some of the things I'm used to. I got exposed to earlier in my career. You said I wouldn't use it for math, for instance, or I don't know, like an Excel function can pretty much do any sort of math right now, right? With the right formula. But you're saying, hey, it's not really it's not automating that, or it's not, helping the business with stuff like that, but it's more on the creative side. And for the creative side, in the accounting world, it's always been about, the interpretation and creative tax strategy aspect of things. And, so I'm very curious to see how the AI would evolve to be able to help solve something like basically a complex tax strategy. It could potentially identify new ones, and be able to put different things together. And so I'm very curious to see how that's going to evolve over time. But I'll tell you, and I'm curious to see, because you're you're Gen Zer, right? And so I'm a millennial, and, through my experience of things that have happened that have just completely, disrupted my industry. I'll start it with, when I was first starting, an associate in the Big Four was doing things that are completely different and 10x different than what an associate coming out of college is doing now, right? What they were doing at the Big Four, you're doing the most basic stuff. I'm talking about scanning documents. I'm talking about ticking and tying, and footing numbers and stuff like that. And so the most basic stuff that have now been that in my journey was kind of replaced with, first it was offshore, right? So okay, you associates, we got this offshore relationship. We're going to just get a bunch of remote accountants that are a fraction of the cost. Businesses are doing that. And so, the biggest companies started implementing these offshore back offices in India and all these things, and just getting rid of all the back office, very simple, but tedious work. Okay. And that over time, it went into technology. So after, they went through and they, figured out, and they made us actually as the senior associates, because by then I was a little bit more tenured. They made us go in and identify literally everything that we could potentially punt out to these offshore accountants, which, by the way, these offshore accountants were probably brighter than us. They're chartered accountants, just living in India or other places. It's just super cheap to attain from a cost perspective. But yeah, we would literally try to templatize every single procedure we can and just farm it out. And by the time the associate got the work, it was already performed. So then now they're adding an additional element of review, and you could understand the efficiency, so on and so forth. Then a few years went by and, the bigger firms started implementing technologies. I don't know if you're familiar. One of the things that they implemented in my industry was a program called Ultrix. And Ultrix was basically an automation system where it was a software where it would essentially reperform and mimic on like exponential speeds on certain accounting tasks that needed to be done. And so it would automate a bunch of shit, essentially.
What you're talking about could have a slippery slope too.
Absolutely.
Because right now, people are still skeptical about AI. Yeah. But I think one of the scariest things is when people start trusting it and are no longer skeptical of it.
Yeah.
And if you take the AI's word for the gospel, then that's when we could be screwed over. There are always going to be errors.
Yeah.
And that could get scary, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that could get scary. It could go the wrong way, right? Imagine the effects of certain things. I mean, the accounting industry could be pretty bad. But other industries, I mean, talk about the medical field, any other field that we start implementing some AI. At the end of the day, I also think, as humans, we desire and need that human element of relationships as well. It's become much less, for better or for worse, and like it's become the norm, right? From going to your accountant's office and shaking his hand, it's become Google Meets or phone calls that are the norm, especially since COVID. But the more and more this evolves, I'm curious to see what that desire from the human element is from the consumer.
I have a question for you. I'm wondering which industry, as someone who's been an entrepreneur and successful business person for many years now, which industry do you think is going to be the first one that is completely automated out?
Completely?
Yeah. Where there's just people who are running software and no more humans in that whole process.
I don't know. I don't know if that, in my lifetime, if that's ever going to happen completely.
Yeah.
Now, the majority, I could already think about a handful of things. There are certain things, but I mean, look, is it a big risk in the accounting industry? I think it is, and I think the organization that stays on top of it and grows with the AI and is not scared of it and is not thinking it is going to be in best position to combat it. But it's gonna be a big deal in just industries over, cross industry. I think it's gonna affect a lot of jobs. That's the reality of it. But at the end of the day, there's going to be the person that's going to have to prompt the AI, I think. And I think there's going to be the person that could finalize it and put the bow on it. And it'd make just like what the automations did. It makes the person's job ever more important. In my industry, the CPA or even the attorney that just delivers the information and that owns and puts a bow on it and, applies his little, self, intellect on it to finalize certain things. And that part of it really excites me.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people don't want to deal with like the mundane, like tedious bullshit. Yeah. For a lot of people, it also employs them and allows them to earn a living. But, you just got to realize that we live in a world that you got to be ready for that and you got to be able to morph it. Hey man, I'm excited to have you guys on our team to help us with some of that stuff, hopefully.
And we're ready to go. Yeah. And also, something what we're talking about with pushing AI forward and there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on. And actually a take I have is, remember how in 2020 during the pandemic, there's this massive bubble with EVs and there were companies that had not produced a single car that were more valuable than Ford, which had been going on for 100 years.
Right.
And so I think we're going to have that exact same kind of AI bubble in the next, 3 to 5 years. We're going to see that exact same thing where people are throwing their money at these AI companies and a lot of people are going to get burned.
100%. There's a big market for it. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you want to take advantage of it and be one of those guys, then by all means, but yeah, that's going to happen. And because if you're not investing in it, you will fail, right? So you got to get it right, and you got to, you know, you got to have people on your side. If it's not you who's very tech savvy and, you know, able to dissect the pros and cons of certain software, and, you know, you got to have someone good on your team to make sure you're seeing that truth.
Yeah.
Seeing that. Yeah.
And I think the number one takeaway, and this is for anyone, any industry, don't invest on promises.
Yeah.
Invest in things that are proven.
Yeah.
So it's like no one checked. You're familiar with Elizabeth Hose and Theranos.
Yeah.
No one checked, you know, if the technology actually worked before they invested.
Right.
It didn't work.
Right.
They sort of just took the word for, oh, she's smart. You know, we've painted this idea of the people who are going to change the world are these, you know, 19-year-old dropouts, which of course you're going to have some Steve Jobs that pop out, but that we can't say that that's going to be the norm.
Right.
You know? It's at the end of the day, there's going to be few individuals that bring change, but it's people as a collective.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, totally. No, I mean, it's all hands in effort.
Yeah.
So, cool, man. Well, you know, I don't know if we're running out of time or how much more time we have, but try to provide some good advice and some tax tips. A tax tip of the day: if you can do short-term Airbnb, it may be a great tax strategy to offset your active income, meaning income from your businesses, W-2s, you know, K-1s from your active businesses, like my law firms, doctors, any type of active business that you have too much income in that you want to offset with property. Mm-hmm. It's a great way to turn that property into non-passive, aka active, and offset that against your business. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you saved, you know, people thousands of dollars just now. So
yeah.
I appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, thanks for joining. We will get together soon.